Alright guys, welcome back to the build. So let's go ahead and get started. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and get the motors mounted up to the arms. I haven't really done a build recently with separate arms like this, so I think putting the motors on the arms first would be a nice easy thing to try. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that. I've been messing around with the exposure on my camera a little bit, trying to brighten things up. I'm hoping I'm making it better. I might not be. I've noticed that things are kind of dim in a lot of my videos, so I know my background doesn't really help, but definitely not a movie producer here. So alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and get these motors mounted on these arms and then we'll move forward. Okay, so I think we're supposed to have 2 fingers pointing forward and 2 fingers pointing back, like so. So as long as we mount the motors on top of the arms as such, that should work out just fine. Okay, I got the mounts finished up, and I've also got this Nameless RC all-in-one board on here. I've got it mounted up with the little rubber inserts that come with it. So the inserts sit on top of the nuts on here. I think this is the right way to do it. The board sits up kind of high. However, once I get the canopy on there, it looks like it'll be just about right with these standoffs that come with it, the bolts, the through bolts. And that should give me plenty of room to get my VTX and receiver in there, get the wiring straight, and kind of keep everything neat and tidy. So I think I'm going to leave it like this. It will make it a little bit tall, but I'm not too sure I'm worried about that. I think I'm going to just try it and see what happens. My battery leads were able to stay the way they were stock. I may or may not install the capacitor that comes with it. I probably will, though. I just don't know where that's supposed to go. I think there's a spot on here for it. I'll have to look, otherwise I'll just solder it right here on the battery. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and solder up the wiring for the motors, and then we'll go ahead and get everything else soldered up. Alright, well, that's the motor wiring done. These will get tidied up by getting taped up to the arms here. Need to organize these a little. The soldering is not the absolute best in the world, but it'll do. Just kind of get those tidied up and scooched off to the side. They'll end up looking like pretty much like that when it's done. I think that'll look pretty good. I was doing some looking before, and I think I can actually take my RXSR and tuck it. Where does it go? Right here. Tuck it right up underneath the flight controller right here, and then the wiring can just go bloop right up to these solder pads. So I think that'll be pretty good. And then of course the VTX will sit on top here. I decided I don't really like this this purple. I think I kind of want the whole thing, you know, murdered out. So we're gonna go ahead and print it up in black. Let's do that right now. All right, here we go. I'll print it up in black TPU, so nice and flexible. Looks like it'll be pretty good. I think this quad's going to look pretty amazing. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get the camera mounted up in here, and then we'll get the VTX figured out, get the receiver figured out, and we'll be pretty close to being done. Well, I was recording a sweet time lapse of me doing the rest of this soldering, but I guess I didn't press the record button, so no time lapse, but it's nothing too complicated here. All I've done is I soldered on the receiver, which is pretty straightforward, and then I've got the VTX soldered on here. I ended up going with the Happy Model VTX because it's actually designed to fit, or this canopy is designed to fit it, so it kind of tucks in here really nicely. And then I also used this just regular dipole antenna because once again the antenna lead was too long for the other antenna I was going to try to use. So I've got those hooked up, and I got my buzzer wired up over here. Once I test this to make sure everything works, I'll put a little dab of hot glue on there to kind of extra secure this. I've also got my capacitor that I'm going to put on here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple pieces of heat shrink, put them on here, and then I'm going to solder it here, and then I will zip tie it over to this arm over here. I think that'll work out just fine. So let's go ahead and do a smoke test real quick. I haven't plugged this in yet, and we'll see how it goes. I should already be bound to my transmitter because I've used this receiver before, but I'll test that stuff later. I got to go into beta flight and fix all the modes and everything anyway, but let's just see if this thing blows up first. I have to turn that off, but okay. Alright, cool. So that all works. I'll turn off the the automated buzzer. So although that one beep was because the transmitter's not turned on right now, so I'll leave that one on. So everything looks good here so far. All I need to do now is set up the modes and do a few other things in beta flight, and this thing should be ready to fly. So I'll do that. I'll get the capacitor soldered on, and we'll get this all kind of smashed together, and then we'll talk about how the build went, and then we'll get some flight footage as well. Alright, well, as you saw from the video, she's flying pretty well, until of course she smashed into a wall. I had some issues with this getting it flying to that point though. The first one was I'm using an RXSR receiver, and as it turns out, the RSXR receivers, when they transmit telemetry to your transmitter, it can cause interference with the video signal depending on how close the receiver is to the transmitter, well, or to the VTX. Well, of course, in this package, it's pretty hard to get things very far away from each other, so I ended up having to turn telemetry off. Now, another annoying thing with that is the RXSR does not have any way to, that I could find anyway, if you know a way, let me know, but does not have any way to transmit RSSI directly into Betaflight so you can see it on your OSD. The workaround to it is you set a channel on your transmitter which will then transmit blah blah blah. Well, the problem with that is, of course, you have to have the RSSI being transmitted back to your transmitter, which comes back to the same problem with the interference in the video signal. So not really happy with the RXSR in this instance. I guess with bigger quads it really doesn't matter, but with these little quads, this is the second time I've run into this. The first time I really looked into it, there's just no good solution. I moved the receiver all over in here, tried to get as far away, I shortened wires and everything, and I can make the problem less obvious, but it was always still there. So the other issue I had was when I first flew this, it flew like garbage. Now, KababFPV, he told me that he barely does any PID tuning at all. I'm really not sure how he gets away with that, because every time basically that I built a quad, I have had to do a bunch of tuning to it just to get it to fly even remotely well. This flight controller came with Betaflight 4.0.4 on it, I think. I went ahead and upgraded it to 4.1. Now, when I upgraded to 4.1 with the stock PIDs, it flew pretty well. As you can see in the video, it actually ended up flying very well. So I still want to do some tuning to it, but I was able to get it to fly reasonably well. There was some damage when I hit that wall. You can see got a little bit of stuff here on this motor. I ripped an antenna wire out of my receiver. That's my fault because I was just flying, you know, for testing purposes, and I didn't zip tie down all the wiring properly, and so it got caught in a prop. Other than that, it held up fairly well. My camera is broken now. There's a dot on it that it's not on the lens. It's actually broken. It's still flyable, but it's not perfect. So anyway, overall, I really enjoy this quad. I just need to do a little bit of work to it to get it fixed back up and flying again. I'm kind of wanting to put a RunCam Split Nano in here. I haven't decided if I want to or not. I've been using the batteries that come from FPV Cycle, and they work pretty well. I have a couple other 3S packs from different brands, and they all seem to be about the same. So anyway, I really like this quad. I think the frame is great. I can't believe it held up that well. I mean, just smacking into a brick wall, basically. There was no damage to the frame, no damage to the motors, no bent shafts, nothing like that. There will be some more videos coming out soon. I've got some more cool projects coming up, so if you're interested in that, I'd love for you to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when I get new videos out. Alright guys, thanks.